So I've gone back and forth on whether I should even do this video, because I don't think this move happens at all this offseason. I think there's a 0% chance that James Harden is moved this offseason, but I do think the general conversation about a James Harden trade, it's not ridiculous, because we all see Houston's situation with the picks and committed to the money and all that stuff, right? So we've seen this thing from Philly, and the Sixers are another team in which there's constant talk about a Ben or Joel trade, and I've been on the side of, like, try as many possible different things to make it work with those two before you think about moving either one of them. But let's talk about this. So if James Harden was actually going to be traded to Philly, what would it require? It would be Harden demanding a trade, because I don't think Houston would give him up right now. The idea is, if you look at Harden's contract, and I said a lot of this in that Bleacher Report video from a couple days ago, but based on what we've seen about star players being moved, you usually start to hear the rumors about a guy wanting out 2 years before their player option, right? And if the Rockets were not too great this season, by the way, I do think they will be good this upcoming year. Harden is good enough by himself to get you to 50 wins or so. But if for whatever reason they were disappointing, and then let's say they went down in round 2 again, or whatever it would be, I guess after something like that, it wouldn't be shocking to hear that Harden wanted out, especially because D'Antoni and Morey are gone now. So how many connections does Harden really have to the Rockets like that? I mean, I don't know his relationship with the owner. It could be fine. It could be kind of whatever. Maybe he ends up loving the new coach they have, Steven Silas. I didn't make a video on that to give my 2 cents on it now. I think, given that he was the, I guess, offensive coordinator in Dallas pretty much, I think it's a pretty easy transition going to the Rockets. But at the same time, I don't think Houston projects to be the favorite in the West next season, especially because I don't think they have a lot of assets to make a lot of real moves. So let's say there is a disappointing playoff finish in James Harden's future, and perhaps then he would want out. And when you start to think about teams that have the assets for it, and you combine that with maybe the same thing happens in Philly, a disappointing playoff loss, and then it becomes this matter of, well, maybe we can make it work with Ben or Joel, but James Harden's available and Morey is going to be running the show, so maybe he would want to give one of them up for Harden. Now, is there a crazy scenario in which the Sixers could get Harden without trading Ben or Joel? I would go with no. Also, it should be said, if James Harden's available, then a whole bunch of teams will be making offers, but if Philly was going to put Simmons or Embiid in the move, I don't know if anybody else could have as good of an offer, especially because the Sixers still have pretty much all their draft picks. What other teams could make good offers for James Harden? I mean, would the Celtics be willing to part with Jaylen Brown? I don't know. That would be a matter of, do you want Jaylen Brown for his whole career, or do you want James Harden for 5 years or so? It would take more than that, but he could be the centerpiece of the move. The Nets, of course, have some expendable guys with LeVert and Dinwiddie and whatever else. Would Atlanta give up John Collins and maybe one of their other young guys, Pops, and then like 3 firsts for Harden? I think that's a possibility. Would the Bulls give up basically everything for Harden? Maybe. If he was younger, I think they would definitely do it. Could you picture Denver putting Jamal Murray in a move like that? That's pretty similar to the Jaylen one, where it's whole career versus 5 years or so of having a top whatever player. There is a chance that Harden can age very well. He has dealt with very few injuries in his career. He has been a bit of an Iron Man, to be honest. Of course, we should remember, if we fast forward a year and James Harden is actually in trade rumors, then he would only have 1 year left, because you assume he declines the player option. And I think that would make it tough for a team like Phoenix, who would love to have Harden, I imagine. And I could picture him trading Ayton and Oubre and whatever else, and just have it be Harden and Booker and whatever else around them, but then you got to be convinced you're going to be really, really good and convince him to stay. Should the Trailblazers give up everything if Harden's available? Yeah, just Harden and Dame and see how good you are. And there's other teams that I could mention, but Philly to me would probably still be the top one, because I mean, Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid is a better trade asset than anything anybody else wants to give up. Now, I guess one other thing about a Harden trade, if it ever happens, is I don't think Houston would look for a rebuild type of a move. I think they would look for more of a retooling, reshuffling, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's possible that they would take enough picks and young players who project to be very good even if they're not amazing in the moment, kind of similar to the AD trade where Ingram then became an all-star. Another team that should be talked about in a Harden deal is Golden State. They've got, of course, the second pick this year. Let's say they end up using that pick on Wiseman or whoever, and they got the Wolves pick next year. Like, let's say the Warriors draft whoever. That guy's good. Pascal takes another jump as a player. And then they have the Wolves pick, which is probably going to convey next season, and that's probably going to be another lottery pick. Would that be enough for James Harden, assuming that the guy the Warriors pick this year ends up being like Rookie of the Year good? Maybe. The Warriors would still have to put more in there. And I'm sure they would want to move Wiggins, and it could be them. You know, the Warriors are definitely gearing themselves up to be a front runner in a big trade. But yeah, I don't think Harden's getting moved this offseason, and in the case of Philly, we're going to have to see what they do and what Morey does with that roster a little bit more. The other thing to think about for the sake of Houston, just because, I don't know, I'll just talk about this at the end of the video. What does a Westbrook trade look like? I imagine they're going to be determined to make it work with Harden and Westbrook. Is it even possible to move off of Russ? I don't really know. I think he actually will accept his player option in 2023. Because there's no way he's getting that much money again. It's going to be $46.6 million. And he and his agent have to realize that. So it's 3 years of Westbrook, $40 million plus every season. And I don't think Houston will do it this year. I think they want to see what they got, because they don't really have many other options. I think Orlando would take Westbrook. I don't know if there's really a move. I think the Pistons would, but I don't think the Rockets would do it for Blake. I feel like if the Rockets were going to trade Westbrook, it would be for a bunch of players. So for whatever that's worth, I mean, to project how good Houston will be, I mean, their roster is pretty much coming back, so they're still going to be one of the best offenses, if not the best offense in the league next year. And defensively, they can hope to be like 16th or so. It's more so just a matter of if they can actually go all the way to the finals. And with the roster they have, I would say no. What are their chances of getting an actual big guy? I think their one real chance would be hoping the luxury tax goes up at least somewhat compared to what it was supposed to be in a normal NBA season, which would be $139 million. Because then you could actually give Ibaka the mid-level and you could like squeak just under the luxury tax. And I think Ibaka would be a really good fit. Besides that, I don't think there's really much out there. Also, if Ibaka was willing to go for the mid-level, then he could just go to the Lakers. So, for what that's worth, yeah, man. Do I think a Harden-Philly trade is possible? I would say for this offseason, no. But if we come back a year from now, maybe.